Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett. I hope you're doing well in these crazy times, and that you've been able to explore your own inner workings through reflections of the outer world. It's crazy out there because it's crazy in here, you know. So doing some repair work in the inner realms will be expressed outside. I want to speak to you today, or just show you a few examples of amazing directional astrology, a technique that was dreamed forth by Michael Earlywine. Local space relocation astrology. And to show you a specific example of the power of planetary pull, as I'll call it. So, let me share my screen with you. And let's tune into this chart. So this is the Solstice Eclipse, the June Solstice Eclipse 2020. If you've been following my work at all, you know I've been calling this, like, seriously the most significant astronomical and therefore astrological alignment of our lifetimes. And while I can't get too much into the why right now, you'll see I cast this chart for Washington, D.C. And there's a reason for that. This is what it looked like with the feet on the ground in D.C. Although, you know, let's go somewhere where this eclipse was visible. Here in DC, it was 2:41 a.m. So of course you can't see the solar eclipse, right? The sun is down below the ground. So let's go to like Mumbai, India, where this eclipse was on high. And suddenly I'm on the wrong day. There we go. Okay. So sun occulted by the moon. And this is not right at the center of the eclipse. In fact, this looks like it wasn't even the total eclipse place, but it's close enough for me to show you something I think really important. It's in a place that the astronomers today call the winter hexagon, which connects these stars, Capella and Castor and Pollux of the twins, Procyon, the small dog, Sirius, the big dog and brightest star of our sky, Regal, the right foot of Orion, and Aldebaran, the eye of the bull. But in other cultures, this very significant place of space, which is so significant because it's one of two places where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic. So let's see if I can tone some of this down and see the Milky Way band coming here. And in fact, this is looking out towards intergalactic space. This is with our back to galactic center. This star El Nath is often used as a marker star. It's one of the horns of the bull for that place of galactic anti-center, if you will. But this is a galactic cross, and there's two of them. And so this cross is a place where, again, we are looking out at the galactic edge, out with our back towards galactic center, out towards intergalactic space. And it's a once in 26,000 year thing, as it is now, and has been for some time, that the solstice degree, this is the north point, 0 degrees tropical Cancer. This is where the northern axis of Earth is leaning always. Once in about every 26,000 years, that point, that north point, that, you know, summer solstice, northern hemisphere, summer solstice sun point will precess across this place on the galactic cross at the hand of the high man, in the words of ancient Celtic prophecy, or the club of time man in Bengali prophecy, or the outreach arm of Osiris in a mythic application from the lands of of Kemet, you know, the place we now call Egypt, above the hearthstones that surround the smoke of creation in Mayan language and or description. And we can go, and Stellarium astronomy software is really wonderful at this, that we can look at star lore from many different points of view. And so there's one here, which is Dakota, Lakota, Nakota. And let me bring the planets back in to show you that at this time of the June solstice eclipse, and here we're looking in Mumbai just because it was visible in that place, and there were significant happenings in China and India at their border where this eclipse was visible. But I want to bring our attention to the United States, as they're now called, this land, because this place, these same stars, this asterism, the Lakota use, instead of using Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, they use the Pleiades to connect this great asterism, and this is called the sacred hoop of stars in the sky. And it's said to be the place where our souls come from, and also a place where we will move through to be purified in the end. It's the great Anipi, or sweat lodge, in the sky. And what you may know as the head of the lion constellation in this star lore was seen as the fire pit, right? So the stones, the grandfathers, are heated in the fire here and then brought into the womb, right? In this place, the sacred hoop. And it said we will go back through this gate to be purified, and then we will walk the spirit road to a place that sets in the southwest. This is coming, by the way, from for me, from a book called Lakota Star Knowledge by Ronald Goodman. I mean, really assembled by Ronald Goodman. There's many elders, mostly from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota that he was connecting with, and some old star maps that were left. All right. So this sacred hoop in the sky, as above, so below, has an earthly component, and it's called the Black Hills. Let's see if I can, of South Dakota. And I think we should probably be able to find somebody's images here. Let's see. Well, maybe we won't take our time. You can see this is my friend Eric Roth, also, who studied at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, because much of this also comes down to us from Daniel Gemario. Here's a small image that for some reason won't open. Okay. So like the place, for example, that is, well, I'll just say the white man calls Devil's Tower, was known as the Bear's Den in the Black Hills, or the Sacred Hoop of South Dakota. And that's related to the stars in the sky that in the Western star lore is known as Gemini, or the twins. But that's the Bear Den in the heavens. And all of these stars of the sacred hoop, they, as above, so below, they have earthly counterparts. So this is an image in the sky, and let's see if we can get, you know, the Black Hills has been called the heart of Earth. And this is where this sacred hoop of stars is literally mapped on Earth. And there's, I mean, just so many powerful stories, but this is sacred land for the Nakota people. This is land that was in treaties that, of course, have been broken. I shouldn't say of course, but that's how it's been, hasn't it? Treaties that were signed in 1851 at Fort Laramie, Wyoming, and later in 1968 in Fort Laramie as well, that promised this land to the Nakota people, actually to several tribes in these treaties. But this is the most sacred land of these people. I mean, so, you know, this is about the most disgraceful thing that could happen. So let's just read this meme that comes up: when white men carved it up and renamed it Rushmore, they were the vandals erasing history, obviously. So 6 grandfathers, named for the earth, sky, and 4 directions, right? So this, by the Lakota people who consider the Black Hills their birthplace in the heart of everything that is. And so recently there was a protest, I don't know, somewhere here there's a lot of things I want to show you, that there was a protest because Trump went to visit Mount Rushmore, as it's called, or 6 grandfathers. And so many protesters blocked the road. I think 21 people were arrested. To protect this land. And hopefully it's still strong in your heart, the protests in this land around the Dakota Access Pipeline at the Standing Rock Reservation in 2016. And recently there was a court order passed to shut down this pipeline. I mean, this is an amazing thing. So it's around Lake Waukee and in Standing Rock Reservation, right? So this is what the water protectors and land protectors were fighting for. And this is one of the first times that a court has deemed a pipeline be shut down, one that hadn't yet leaked, because there's been such a solid fight, right? There was a very amazing protest, as I hope you really well know and remember, on land. And then also in the courts. And it seems to be working. So the Keystone Pipeline was ordered to be shut down some time ago. I mean, we need to keep our eyes on these things, right? So this is a very different pipeline, but it's interesting to me that this protest about 6 grandfathers happened in Keystone, South Dakota. So we might just call that coincidence, and that's fine, but it's still, for me, rather intriguing. Okay. Well, so what does this have to do with astrology? First of all, yeah, we have this happening in this sacred hoop of the sky. And there's also now, so let me search at the same time, Comet Neowise, which is right here in the sacred hoop. And over the course of days, since we had the sun in the hoop for a lunar eclipse, then right in the center of the hoop for the solar eclipse, right at this galactic cross, on the solstice. This is like a thrice in 26,000 year happening. 2001 was the last, 1982 before that, and then that's it. Then the sun at the other side of the hoop for the lunar eclipse that followed, because we're in this triple eclipse, lunar, solar, lunar portal, that you may say will close down with tomorrow's second Cancer new moon of this year of 2020. But in a sense, an eclipse is the new moon for 6 months until the next solar eclipse. And some of their energies last for a lot longer. This might literally be kind of the statement of 6,500 years. So I'm going to bring us back to DC. I'll just show that this is the idea of local space astrology. Like if I'm aligning my body to that eclipse at that time from Mumbai, I'm facing generally south, a little bit east of south. So let's go to DC here, because there are some rather amazing things that I really feel in these alignments happening here in the Americas, which some have called Turtle Island. So the constellation Western Star Lorient, that's known as Pegasus. The great square of Pegasus is seen as the turtle in the heavens. And this is rising in the east here at the time of the eclipse, 2:41 a.m., 27 a.m. on June 21st, 2020 for Washington, D.C. This is the, in the Lakota tradition, this is like the horns of the antlers of the elk. We see that as the fish, right? The Pisces fish in the Western tradition. So the solstice eclipse itself was over here, underground, somewhere between the IC, which for DC is always due north underground, and the ascendant here. But I want to bring our attention to a few different directions that the planets were bringing attention to at this time. Specifically, Mars and Neptune, who you can see from DC at the time of the solstice eclipse. Mars is here somewhere between east and southeast at a heading, we could say, of about 110 degrees, okay? 90 is due east, 180 is south. So about 20 degrees south of east. We can see more specifically up here, 110. Neptune at about 120. Looks like I didn't click Neptune, hard to do. There's a couple other beings I want to point out if Stellarium will allow us to. One is Chiron, but I need to learn how to spell. Who's here, closer to the easterly direction. Chiron at what's called an azimuth, or we could say a heading of 95 degrees, so 5 degrees south of east. And another one is, let's see if Stellarium can bring us to Eris, okay. Eris, who was below ground, just a little bit north of east, okay. So this local space idea was dreamed forth by great astrologer Michael Earlywine. The idea is, look, if I'm out here and I'm facing Mars at this time, right? So I'm facing this direction, about 20 degrees towards the south of east over here. That's also directing me somewhere on Earth. And many of the astrology softwares will let us cast these astrology maps these days, Astro Maps. Now, this is a map that many people are kind of more familiar with, this technique that's called astrocartography. And what astrocartography does is for any moments in time, it shows us where planets are rising. So during the eclipse, for example, the sun and the moon, the eclipse itself was rising in Western Africa here. Or where planets were reaching. And for eclipses, that's kind of the principal concern. That's why I went over to Mumbai, because the map can quickly tell me that, oh, that eclipse was overhead in India. And culminating, so it was midday during the eclipse here in India, through Tibet. I can look at where planets were setting, right? And then I can get into, oh, somewhere between sunrise, midday, and sunset is where the light is on Earth at the time, and between sunset and sunrise is where Earth is in the shadow, right? The midnight line is this sun and moon during the eclipse. Midnight is sun, specifically, at the IC, at the Imam Cheli, at the bottom of the heavens, so where it's due north. So I want to show you where that's happening. All right, so this is Kansas, Oklahoma, okay? This is the Black Hills. Neptune was rising in the Black Hills. You see the heart of Earth right there, all right? Ceres was rising in Oklahoma. Mars was rising in Oklahoma. Chiron was rising in Oklahoma. Why so much intention about Oklahoma? Because really important shifts have happened there. And this, I could cast this chart for any moment or any place on Earth for this moment of time. In this moment of time, Uranus was rising in DC. Jupiter and Pluto were culminating in DC. Eris was rising in DC. And so we can see all of that in this chart. Here's Uranus rising. Eris rising is an interesting thing. Looks pretty far from the ascendant. But when we look to Eris at this time, we'll find is Eris was very much about to rise. Now the degree that Eris projects to in the ecliptic, because that's what we do, had certainly already risen. But Eris had not yet risen. Okay. Kind of a tale for another time when we speak local space, and I'm going to shift there now. The idea is if I could feel into the energy of Eris, Eris would be directing me in this very, specific direction. This place slightly north of east. So there's very interesting astrocartographical energies at this most powerful eclipse. I mean, Jupiter and Pluto, right? So evolution. In Capricorn, we want Earth justice, and there's definitely strong revolutions happening right now, right? So in mundane astrology, typically you look at the capital of a nation to see what's happening for that nation. But the astrocartography lines are going to show us certain places, like if we just focus here, as I am for this video, places that are highlighted. Look how much energy is happening here. And one more very important thing about planets at the IC, so like the midnight sun, that's the energy for the northern hemisphere of the north, but it's down below ground. So planets at the IC, they literally, their energies are speaking through the land of the earth. Do you see? So that's how I work with astrocartography IC lines. And I'm not the first to. It's like the voice of the land is being spoken through that planetary energy or that connection. And we have to move through the language of the earth in that location to tune into and have a conversation with that planet. But I think of astrocartography as how the planets see us. This other technique of local space lines, I think of as how we see the planets. Because again, like if I'm just aligning myself to Mars at the time of the eclipse, I'm looking over here in the east, about 20 degrees towards the south of east, and you can see that Mars line that's emanating out of DC in that direction. Where is it heading? So let's tune in. I'm going to go to astro.com, which really lets me zoom into a place and bring you to Fort Laramie, Wyoming, where these false treaties were signed, these broken treaties in 1851 and 1868. Now, I'm on a mission to explore the astrology of those times and really deepen into this. But so here's Fort Laramie is very close to Casper. There's Laramie, Wyoming, Cheyenne. Let me just quickly kind of go to Fort Laramie at the time. So it's not down where I was looking. It's just so we can see where it is when we go back to DC and track this. So northeast or northwest of Scottsbluff, which was on the map. And I just want to kind of zoom out and we can see that at the time, look, Venus, who was retrograde in Gemini, okay, at this time, and in the sacred hoop of stars, I've got to look down below ground in DC to see that happening. But here's Venus, you'll see called Morning Star here, was in the sacred hoop. And there's actually a very specific place of the sacred hoop. I'd love to kind of tune into this and see how close Venus was pointing to that place on Earth in this time. So let me go back to DC and then we'll head back over to Wyoming and we'll zoom in Okay, so we see the Black Hills here. This is hard for me to do in places that don't have many cities to utilize as markers, right? So there's that Casper, Wyoming. Well, I guess instead of going there, because I'm just going to bore you to tears, let's just say, let's ask this question of, well, how close to these lines must we be for this to take effect? I mean, we zoom out and see the world. Look, this red line, which is the Mars line, it's touching into Australia, as you can see. And this is specifically, so this is different than astrocartography. Local space is very specific to a location. Right from Washington, D.C., that Mars line is moving out. Actually, south of east, right? We saw that. It's going down through Africa. And they'll all go to the antipode, the opposite side of the globe. And then it's coming up through Australia and coming back through the sacred hoop. Same thing with Neptune. It's directing us to the east. Okay. Uranus, right? So Uranus, Neptune to Africa. So, a very important thing we should be looking here too. We should be thinking about these routes, But I want to focus here. But I think it's important to say that this, in a sense, is like the way that I work with this is it's the elder side of Mars and Neptune. They have to go all the way around the globe. These are actually just lines around the globe that are coming now back through Australia here and through Wyoming. And for the Neptune line, which, by the way, has long been associated with oil, Mars with revolution, if you will, Uranus as well, Mars with activists, with war. I mean, why were these treaties signed? So I think it's a fascinating thing to see that Mars line moving right here through Fort Laramie. Okay, so there's Scottsbluff. Sorry, now we got close, right? So Fort Laramie we saw is just right here, northwest of Scottsbluff. So in here. I mean, so close, right, to this Mars line. And this Neptune line moving right through the Black Hills. Okay, and let me show you a map of here is the Lake Waukee, where a court ruling has shut down. It hasn't shut down yet, but they've ordered a shutdown of the DAPL pipeline, which the Standing Rock protests were protesting, right? Specifically here on Earth, okay, which is on Standing Rock Indian Reservation land. Okay, so here's Pine Ridge. There's many reservations here. Rosebud. And so, let me zoom out and we can see the Black Hills here. Okay, and then we'll see up north of there this Lake Waukee, where the court ruled because there hasn't been adequate environmental assessment, right? In this to earth justice, right? Water, land protectors. This is just such a powerful thing. I mean, it was very disheartening when, Obama did not go the right way with this thing in 2016. After this very powerful movement, but the movement was powerful and it continues. And we need to keep our hearts there. And we see that the heart of Earth, the heart of this land, of Turtle Island, is being protected, so may this court decision be held up. All right, so again, on these local space maps, I mean, we see Neptune moving right through that land. Neptune is associated with oil, but let me also say with spirit and oneness. And Neptune is now in Pisces, and let me show you a thing here. just need to pause this so I don't reveal a bunch of client names, which is not cool. Let me bring up a chart that is often used for the United States of America, which is July 4th, 1776. And you may know that this solstice eclipse was followed by a July 4th lunar eclipse, right, at the United States annual solar return, or birthday, if you will. Many of us have been speaking about the United States, the 1776 chart, being now in a Pluto return. It was really important to see this Neptune opposition as well. And at the time of the eclipse, Neptune and Mars, both in Pisces, I mean, their midpoint, 21 and 26 is 23.5 degrees. I mean, almost exactly opposite. Virgo Neptune on high, and at least this, what's called the Sibley chart that is often employed for the United States. Retrograde Mercury, which was the case for the United States birth as well, at the sun, which is the Sirius degree. This is all in the sacred hoop of stars. Venus retrograde, very close to this Uranus. I mean, so there's just so much to see here. A Ceres return. Okay, so let's return to the map for the solstice time. And I want to show you Ceres was moving up here through Great Lakes, Pipestone. Okay, Minnesota is one of two places where Lakota, Janupa, the pipe, the stone for the pipe, can be made. Ceres, the land. And the other is in the Black Hills. We look at these energies moving to Oklahoma. So this is Chiron going slightly north of Oklahoma through Kansas here. Okay. And then this is Eris, right? The uninvited. The one who threw the golden apple. And we'll see that energy moving here through Oklahoma. So why have I been speaking so much about Oklahoma? Because, while this is happening, DAPL's shut down, protests of Trump in Keystone around six grandfathers, right? Which has now been carved in this terrible way. Lake Waukee, finally, this maybe justice of the, shutdown of this black snake, the DAPL pipeline. We have another very powerful symbol here and happening, which is the Washington football team, ever called the Redskins, and resisting this, need to get aligned and change that terrible name. It's happening, right? So Redskins to change name. And I mean, interestingly, people speaking to the corporate owners of this thing and, finally a name change. I mean, and this has happened before, but, oops. Yeah, hopefully it's not till 29/29. Just recently, this has been in the news, July 13th, 2020, historic day. Washington-based team officially announced the retirement of the racist and disparaging Redskins team name and logo. So all in this eclipse cycle. And there's an interesting proposal for a name change. Code Talkers has been proposed, right? Because you may know that the Navajo language was very significant in World War II, right? And utilizing a language, a very unique language, to speak in a code that cannot be broken. And, let's do... I look at this, and this is a sad thing to do, to speak about maps of certain tribal land, because just movements so many times. But, the mesas in Arizona, right? So you can see that Eris line moving through Oklahoma and down here to the mesas of Arizona. Now, Eris has been a really significant player. So a lot of our attention's been on the Capricorn Council, as I'm fond of calling this. Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn's now moved back into Capricorn and has during this great eclipse lunation. Athena's been on hand too, say wisdom. And all of these in a very strong square with Eris. I mean, you can see at the time of the solstice eclipse, Pluto square Eris so significantly, right? And look into the Eris mythos. All right, so what happened in Oklahoma? Supreme Court rules in favor of Oklahoma Indian claim. And interesting just to see what's going to happen as a result of this, right? So track this, right? So we hear here at NPR, Supreme Court rules that about half of Oklahoma is Native American land. I mean, this is like, landmark. And I'll just say this thing. I really encourage you to look into this case. It dates back to, I think, 97, maybe 1996. And this is going to get a little heavy here. And maybe a little Eris, who can be very much about the discord and change through discord. An awakening, I could say, through discord. The case itself, very sadly, is based upon a criminal case in which a man sexually abused, let me just use a better word, raped, I think, a 4-year-old child. But what the case is about, and it's been in appeals, since then, is that there is no federal jurisdiction here in native land. And here, now that the Supreme Court ruling was passed saying, yes, this is native land, and yes, we do not have jurisdiction. There's a lot of, that's very open right now. I will say that was literally, this law was signed, and I think for many people, you could say surprisingly, by a Supreme Court justice appointed by Trump. That might also raise suspicions for many. But now there's a lot of people who this ruling suggests have been unjustly incarcerated by people who did not have any jurisdiction. Now that could get obviously really sticky. I don't want to go there. I just want to show you once again how powerful this technique is. I mean, look at the moment at this sacred hoop eclipse with Neptune during the time of a Neptune opposition for the United States. I mean, it'd be interesting maybe to cast this for Philadelphia as well. I could go over here, for example. Really love that this Astro.com map will allow me to zoom in so deeply. But, it'd be interesting to see like the connections between the current capital of Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia at the time. But in 1851 and 1868, and I need to do some research to learn about, we can say the Trail of Tears. That's what pushed a lot of tribes over to Oklahoma. Anyway, this is another thing I'm called to explore. This chart sadly won't show me Chiron and some other, like Eris and some other planets. I think we would find some very interesting alignments. Anyway, look how powerful this technique is, just in this one example. And throughout the course of this week, I'm going to show you a lot of amazing examples of local space, like, and from this mundane, like, political level. Now, personally, absolutely amazing. And we can do this globally, right? So, like, at this time of the solstice eclipse, like Neptune, spirit, Mars, activism, we're like calling the capital, pulling the capital right? Through Africa and Australia, all the way through the earth back, you know? So where in the moment of your birth were the planets pulling you, right? So I was born in Boston. Where were they pulling me from, you know? And actually, I can see how many of them were pulling me to where I sit now. What about if I relocated my birth moment for the place where I sit now? Where were they pulling me? And even not just like, were they pointing to Egypt? I mean, are they pointing to the park over the hill? Or even, let's get real local, how are the planets of my nativity configured in this room? How can I honor them in such a way to really kind of anchor magically that energy, like, you know, building altars for these, right? So I'm just starting to kind of construct that because I'm just building curriculum also for a 5-week local space course I will be teaching. Let me show you one more web page here for Kepler College. I'm really excited to have an opportunity. It's the first time I'll be teaching for Kepler College, which is now an online astrological university. So if you go to Kepler College, like the astrologer, keplercollege.org, and go to events, upcoming courses, let's see, where is my local space course here? And they kind of got an image of like some feng shui because this is kind of, it's a beautiful like Western application of like compass feng shui, getting aligned and doing some like work to alleviate potential tensions or honor activations by the planets. Like, you know, so this is kind of like a Western astrological directional approach of anchoring in your home. And so I will start actually with the directions, like old school, you know, medicine wheel, sundial, like getting out of the magnetic compass trip, like tuning into true directions. It's so important at this time. We're like to get grounded again, to reconnect to the motions of the heaven and earth, to become human, to become earthling again. But we'll take this out of the home too and look, you know, and I'll show you places around the world where, whether consciously or not, this technique has been used by those who built cities ritualistically, like DC and Paris and London. And we'll see the alignments of the Great Pyramid, you know, and the alignments between like the pyramid and Jerusalem, for example. It's uncanny, right? So we're going to take this global, very local. Yeah. So I hope you'll join me. Check it out again at keplercollege.org. You can go to events, upcoming courses. This is a 5-week course. So you can go over here to 5-week courses or just scroll down on that page and find this feng shui look in space, the astrology of local space, 5 weeks. And so it begins August 1st, Saturday. It's going to be 5 consecutive Saturdays beginning August 1st, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific. There'll be some homework for you to do on your own time. And I'll be showing how you can use free astronomy and free astrology softwares thanks to Stellarium, Astro Gold. We'll do this also in Google Earth, another free system. So, you know, and actually I want to see that. So I want to see at the time of this eclipse from Washington, D.C., there's this amazing comet streaking through the sky. And I can see here in Stellarium that the comet was at a heading of 27 degrees. Okay, which is like basically northeast. And I can go on Google Earth. This will take a minute to open. But I've got 5 minutes till a lesson starts. Let's go to Washington, D.C. Oh, by the way, these are my personal relocated local space houses the way that I do that. And I've created a new way to do this. I'll show you, well, it's hard to say traditional, but the original Michael Earlywine's vision of just working with the directions as your houses, the cardinal directions. But I like to tune it to the ascendant. So, long story, I call it your shamanic direction. We'll tune into that together in the course. But for now, let's go to DC. And in Google Earth, it's pretty cool. I can use this ruler tool. And I can just see where the comet was directing. You know, let me go to the Capitol building. Oh, I see. I'm looking. What's going on? Oh, Jefferson. Well, here we go. And we saw here in Stellarium a heading of 27. Oh, I lost it. 2719. And I mean, I can literally get that specific in Google Earth. So 19 minutes is about 0.25 or about 0.3 degrees. So I can go 27. I'll go to the opposite side of the globe from DC. And Google Earth shows it to me pretty clearly because the line starts freaking out. And I can just align this to 27 degrees. Now I also would want to, and I'm not going to do it now because I don't have time, but I'd also want to go the other direction, which is 270 degrees, 207 degrees, 180 plus 27. I'm going to call that close enough for jazz for the sake of time. And so we can see where comet Neowise C20F3 was directing the gaze of DC at this time. And getting pretty close to Philadelphia. I want to say if you could just imagine that line going in the other direction, it actually goes right through like many of the true tribal centers for tribes that were forced to Oklahoma by Andrew Jackson. And, you know, we shouldn't blame just him, but he's certainly at the head of a thing of the Trail of Tears. So this line's going up through the northeast of the United States, but then it's going to go around the globe, Scandinavia. And interestingly, remember we saw the eclipse was visible here in India, and I started our journey in Mumbai. So that's a trippy thing because Comet Neowise was directing the DC heart to that place on Earth at this time. So much to explore here, as with all things astrology, endless, amazing, literally astronomical. Or that's my path, my devotion, literally astronomical. So let's get our feet back on the ground and know that when I'm observing, let me use a better word for my experience, like praying with Jupiter, that I'm, you know, last night I'm sitting with Jupiter and Saturn, I'm with Neowise, like I'm literally also directing, I'm being called towards a direction on Earth. Where is that? And I found uncanny things. So I look forward to showing you. Please join me in this 5-week Kepler College Local Space Astrology class. I will see you there. And throughout the course of this week, I'm going to show you some really crazy alignments of significant events in this terms of local space. So I keep saying I'm going to do a short video. I don't know that that could ever happen, but hopefully you've enjoyed the information you found here. If you want to tune into your own personal local space, you can find me for sessions at GeminiBrett.com. You can also find a donate button there if you'd like to give a little something back. But I hope I've intrigued you and interested you. So I think it's going to be a little heavy also, but I think next time I'll do this and we'll go to the 9/11 moment, the first tower collision, and we'll see where Mars points at the time. And I think you probably already can guess. See you then. Until then, I will see you in space, love, and planets. Stay alive and tuned in to the strength of yourself and to the dream. That's so much of the vision. I want to speak to you about what the comet told me last night in my dream sometime soon. Love and planets, friends. Bye-bye.